takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Anita McCuitt, and I'm the president of the Canadian Club Toronto. It's no secret that when it comes to VC funding within the tech sector, women receive only a tiny fraction of all the available funding. And in fact, it can even be more challenging for women to get a loan to start up a business of any kind compared to their male peers. Today, we're joined by industry giants, Sabrina, Geremia, and Gillian Riley, who are going to share what they've learned about women in tech, as well as their tips and strategies for navigating startups and preparing for those VC funding pitches. Before we dive into today's topic, here's some information about how you can participate with us. The click here to switch stream tab helps if you find that your internet is slow. The video quality may decrease, but the audio should stay strong. And once you click the questions tab, you can enter your questions and our moderator will receive them and ask our panelists. Thank you to today's event sponsors, Borden, Ladner, Jervis, Canadian Bankers Association, and PwC. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for over 124 years. And it's because of our sponsors that we're able to continue to do so, even during these virtual times. Now to introduce today's panelists. Gillian Riley is the president and CEO of Tangerine Bank and executive sponsor of the Scotiabank Women's Initiative. We're also proud to call Gillian a past president of the Canadian Club. Sabrina Geremia is vice president and country manager of Google Canada. And today's panel will be moderated by Arati Sharma, Director of Product Marketing for Shopify. One of the club's traditions that has not changed during this time is a toast that we make to our country before every event. Usually we do this in person with the raising of a glass, but if you've got a glass nearby, let's raise it, make a nod to the screen, and toast Canada. To Canada. Arati, I'll turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Great, thank you so much. So I want to start off with why are we actually having this conversation at this moment in time? We know that entrepreneurship and small business is the backbone of our economy. Specifically in Canada and the city where I'm from, Toronto, the technology and startup ecosystem is thriving. As an early employee of Shopify, I can tell you I've seen the rise of the everyday entrepreneur. It feels like everyone is starting a business today. We can thank technology for that. It's definitely lowered the bar of entry. However, as Anita said, we know that there are challenges for those outside of that typical entrepreneur persona that we see in the media, especially women. So things like raising VC money, finding and hiring a technical team, disrupting traditional industries, all while trying to run a business during this very challenging time, to say the least. These are the things I want to cover today. So Sabrina, why don't we start it off? The pandemic has definitely accelerated technology adoption. How are you seeing Canadian companies adapt and pivot?
Yeah, thanks, Arati, and hello to everybody. I'm Sabrina. I just want to start by saying how bullish I am as digital for an economic engine for Canada. I mean, you see it at Shopify. We see the growth of companies that are digital everywhere. And I just want to give a nod to Canada, because if this were a house, I would say we've got really good bones on our digital ecosystem. We have an amazing ecosystem of various incubators, anchor tenant companies, emerging companies that work well together. We are a country that values diversity and we are inclusive, et cetera. And, we really have world-class talent. We have among the best. And I think this is such a good moment. So I think that's just like an important thing to start with is if you're on this call and you're thinking about starting a business, like this is such a great place to be. And it is a very interesting time to do it. So your question was about what I'm seeing. So I work with a lot of different companies across the landscape, name every sector, and I talk a lot to their CEOs. I think some folks are thriving and what everybody is doing, and some folks are challenged, but everybody is digitally transforming. Take a big number in years and condense it to months, right? So I'm saying like 5 years of digital transformation in 5 months. And I'm seeing this across the board, and it's interesting because I think Canada's playing catch up on a lot of digital transformation, especially on the global stage versus Asia and other countries. But you're seeing this like lay a groundwork, I think, for economic opportunity, job creation, for growth to come. And I'll give you just like one or two examples, like car companies, right? Like it was very difficult in the midst of March and April to buy a car, but everybody wanted the Great American or the Great Canadian Road Trip. So they turned to YouTube or to digital to do full walkarounds on cars before you actually wanted to buy them. The entertainment industry, movie theaters are closed, very difficult. I don't know if any of you saw Trolls World Tour. It was like one of my favorites to watch of the summer with my kids. That film was actually more profitable with a digital release only than the first Trolls film in the first 5 months. So there's like, I could give you like so many things. We're seeing 3,000 year-on-year increase on curbside pickup. We're seeing grocery stores completely pivot to how they're delivering. And it's just so amazing. And I feel very energized, even though it's tough and I really empathize with it. I just feel energized by the fundamental work that's going on digital transformation in Canada.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, at Shopify, some of my favorite examples locally have been the way restaurants have pivoted. They quickly got their Shopify stores set up. E-commerce isn't new to a restaurant entrepreneur, but the way that people were selling wine, pivoting and selling groceries, unique products that you can't actually get anywhere else. I found I was definitely shopping more for things that I don't traditionally buy online during the pandemic. So that was great to see, I think, Canadians rally. Gillian, I think, we've seen the rise of online banking and how easy that is for everyone. How did you see the pandemic accelerate that for your industry? Oh, Gillian, you're still on mute.
Hi, sorry. Yes, I always forget to take that mute button off. That's one of the things I have to get better at. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's great to be here with my old friends at the Canadian Club. It's great to see how they've transitioned their events into the virtual setting. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy in these times. To your question, Arati, that the changes that we've seen in the banking industry, I want to just start with a word that we hear a lot. And I keep hearing this word pivot. And I know Sabrina mentioned it in her remarks. The need to pivot, I think, and it's a word that, I must hear it 10 times a day, but I think it's so relevant to what people are going through in this pandemic. And we've changed the way we live, we've changed the way we shop, we've changed the way we work, and we've had to pivot in all parts of our life. And that can be it can be complicated and scary, but I think it's developed all of us to have a lot of resiliency. And so those are the two words for me that I think resonate: pivot and resiliency. And I think it's particularly important for women and women entrepreneurs. What we've seen in the banking industry as it relates to digital, obviously, I like Sabrina's point. I use it all the time myself. What would have taken 5 years has happened in 5-6 months now. We've seen the advent of digital activity, digital payments has gone up hugely. The amount of checks in circulation has come way down. So people are using email money transfer wires in much, much greater ways. It's obviously much faster, it's safer. So that's certainly a tip. I would encourage everyone to think about using more digital payments, and we're seeing that up in very large ways. So the transaction activity is up 20-30%. We've also seen that, people are doing things much more virtually, talking to advisors and getting advice in virtual ways and asking for support from the bank. And that's very new. It was typically people would want to go to the bank branch, and we're seeing a lot more through contact center and virtual ways to talk to financial institutions, which is another great way to get that advice and that information from banks. So I'm going to come back to my opening remarks. The ability to pivot and be resilient, I think is going to be really important for all of us as we look ahead. And banking, like many other sectors that Sabrina mentioned, have really pivoted in new ways to digital being at the forefront.
Great. And so, we talk a lot about how there's resiliency in Canadians, how we're thinking about business. You see that in the small business community a lot. Now, what about starting a business today, right? We know that you need to be technology, you need to understand technology. The landscape is completely accelerated, and it's a weird time. So what about starting a business today?
Arati, this could be the best time ever to start a business. I mean, I always say the tea leaves are pretty clear on what are the sectors that are really booming and where there's a lot of unmet opportunity. Also, if you see just some of the things right now in clean tech, et cetera, there are so many interesting areas that are emerging. Just a fun fact, Airbnb and Uber were born out of the 2008 financial crisis. So I think what happens in the middle of a crisis is you can take a step back and you can look at your tea leaves and think about where your passion meets those tea leaves, because it's a lot of these things are about riding emerging trends and large trends. And if you think about the startups in the past, they were riding waves of Moore's Law, connectivity. Right now, there's a large e-com swath going up. There's quite a bit going on, but the fundamentals of starting a business are the same, right? You need an amazing strategy. You need a fantastic leadership vision, insight, and then eventually a team that you're going to build out and so on. And, you need funding too, right? You need funding that then translates to outcomes, which is revenue, which is key indicators that you're driving, et cetera. So I think this is a good time. And what is so great about the time that we are in now, as difficult as it is, and again, I really want to empathize that this is difficult for so many of you, is the barriers to starting a business have never, ever been lower. If 20 years ago, just think about this, you couldn't use Google Meets and you couldn't actually put all of your infrastructure on the cloud. You couldn't partner with Shopify to take the entire enormity of setting up an e-commerce platform. You couldn't reach billions of people around the world from Canada. And I'm super bullish, by the way, on global headquartered technology companies, and every company is a technology company based in Canada. All of these things are available right now, and you can start small, test, iterate, find out what's worked, and you can scale really, really quickly. So I think it's a really interesting time to be starting a business right now, and especially as a female founder.
Is it okay, Arati, if I add one?
Oh, yeah.
On that? Yeah. It's such great comments, Sabrina. I do think there's always a silver lining in these things. And, I think when you get into these environments, it really forces people to find new and compelling ways to create value for customers. So if you can find a niche that's somehow compelling, that could be a new thing or something that's reinvented, now's a great time. And I think creative and innovative juices flow even more in these kinds of times. You said there's some, I think it was Uber that you mentioned, came out of this kind of an era and started in sort of more of a crisis type environment. It's really finding where you can add that value and taking a chance that it's really going to do that. So yeah, I agree. It's a good time to get out there and bring value to things in new ways.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that goes for women especially. Like, I think that there's so many problems to be solved. And Sabrina, just on your comment on, we have Zoom, we have Google Meets, we have Slack, we have all of these tools like Shopify. The barrier is definitely lowered. One thing that's on my mind is, we have a lot of women who are listening today and they're wondering, what are the immediate steps they can take to accelerate their business or start a business? Let's talk about the programs that both of you support, because, you're both leaders in your space, but also you're part of some really interesting programs that are helping accelerate businesses. So Gillian, what about the Scotiabank Women Initiative? How are you supporting women entrepreneurs at different stages right now?
So we launched the Scotiabank Women Initiative almost 2 years ago. It was December of 2018. Hard to believe it's been almost 2 years. And the premise, so the vision of the program is really truly about strengthening equality for women business owners, women-led businesses. I mean, that's the premise of the program. It has 3 pillars to the program: access to capital, mentorship, and education. And so we've put a lot of effort around each of those pillars. We've committed to deploy $3 billion of capital over a 3-year period, and we're well 2/3 of the way on that journey already, deploying the capital. And we're also working in the venture capital community as well to help enable there. So that's the access to capital pillar that we think is so important. But beyond access to capital is providing women with the mentorship and the education. So getting that mentorship, that networking opportunity to meet with other women, meet with subject matter experts in different fields, marketing, technology, governance, whatever it is, to give that access and that mentorship. We do it through Scotiabank executives as well as people in the community, giving that access. And education, we have a website, Scotiabankwomeninitiative.ca, which provides a lot of educational tools and access to information. And we've also hosted Unmentorship Bootcamp, which helps women to build their business, grow their business. It's access to external individuals that have the expertise as well, and as well networking with other women. And we've had those virtually of late, of course, to very strong results. And thousands of women have been through these boot camps. So I think we're on a really nice and good journey through the Scotiabank Women Initiative to enable equality for women-led businesses to grow and thrive. They represent about 25% of all businesses in Canada right now that are led or run by women. The hope is that gets to much greater levels, and we're looking to expand this into other parts of our bank, into wealth management and capital markets, this premise of the 3 pillars, so that we can really bring that equality for women in all of these areas and grow that.
That's
so
great.
I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think the learning and education piece is so important right now. And I feel like there's 2 ends of that. One is a lot of women have other responsibilities in the home, and to be able to learn on your own time, incredibly critical.
Do you mind if I add one thing, Arati, that I wanted to mention a podcast that we've developed. It's called Forum for Women Entrepreneurs. It's a not-for-profit organization that we have partnered with. I actually listened to one of their podcasts this morning. And I think that there's some podcasts around COVID that we've helped them with, but they have a lot of other partners. And there's some really great tools and information on that podcast, which you can listen to. It's specific for female entrepreneurs. It's really, really good information there.
Great. Thank you so much. One thing that you said really got me thinking is, at Shopify, we also see the rise of women entrepreneurs. One of our largest segments globally is actually women age 40 plus. So we know that women are starting businesses at this rapid phase. Sabrina, I think, we know in the technology space, accelerators work. Accelerator spaces, accelerator programs, trying to get the type of entrepreneur at the beginning really set up for success. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the Google Accelerator for Women Founders?
Yeah, I will. I mean, and I just want to also give a nod. We've got a great accelerator and incubator ecosystem in Canada, and I've spent time on board with everyone, and it's a really good place for all of you to start. Like, check out DMZ, check out Mars, look at what Communitech is doing, etc. There are a lot of great programs there. And so, we've been in the game, and like, we believe it's so important to our mission, right? And organizing the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. It's about empowering diverse people to start companies, and especially women. It's a passion of mine as well. So this accelerator that we launched, it was a couple of months ago. We got over 1,000 applicants across the US and Canada. So very big demand. It's really clear that there's a lot of great ideas out there. 5 companies from Canada were selected. So some really great ones: Coconut Software, Heirloom, Livestock Water Recycling, My Intelligent Machines, and Xenia Technologies. Just like a big shout out to all of you. It's a really big deal to be selected for this. And what this is it's a cohort program where they're going to be taken through different modules. They're going to create a community together. And you've heard this a lot. Like, I think especially now, like, being at home, it's lonely, right? And being an entrepreneur is lonely. So finding your tribe and your community and being able to create that community, and then bringing in mentors and sponsors, that's what we're trying to do. But really importantly, this is really focused on giving these female tech founders the technical help that they need in areas like machine learning, product development, UX, web design, and taking them through this cohort of a community. But I just wanted to let you know, it's not just the incubator programs or the accelerators. I think at the very beginning, Gillian mentioned the great resources that Tangerine is offering. There's a couple of other things that I just want to make sure that everyone knows about. If you go to startup.google.com, this is our Google for Startup site. We have amazing resources there. It allows you to actually see best practices on how to start with VC funding, how to actually grow your revenue, all of these best practices from entrepreneurs around the world, because we do this across every market that we operate in. This is a big focus for us. And tomorrow in Canada, we do something called First Fridays. So you can look up First Fridays for Startups.com. It's also on my Twitter. It's on my LinkedIn as well. And tomorrow, Arati, we're doing it with Shopify. And we're talking about the rise of e-commerce and how you can actually ride that wave and how you can partner to win and use the tools, the shopping announcements we've made at Google. So Bill Reddy is going to be a part of it. And that's every Friday, once a month, not every Friday, one Friday a month. And I think these are really great forums where you can ask questions. You can learn more about what's happening closer to home as well.
Great. Funny enough, my husband is on that with your team. So both of you mentioned raising capital. I've heard it through both of your comments so far in the conversation. And we know that it's really hard to raise capital as a woman. There are so many systemic barriers. A couple of years ago, I took over our family office, Angel Investments, and our thesis is essentially you have to be a woman-led business and a Canadian, or at least 50% of your founding team has to be women with enough equity into the company. And by doing that, I have met so many great women entrepreneurs. But from seed to then raising VC capital, there seems to be a barrier, especially in the Canadian landscape. And I know that, we have some really great VC firms in Canada who are looking at their diversity practices. But I mean, Gillian, maybe you can help here and be a little bit more tactical with tips that you can provide the audience. How do you get ready for that VC pitch? How do you start thinking about that next level before you approach a VC?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question for sure. I've spent a lot of years providing financing and capital for businesses of all sizes. In fact, 26 years. So I've seen a lot of different things over a lot of time. One of the reasons I started the Scotiabank Women Initiative, in fact, was because I got feedback over my years that females were having trouble getting access to capital, and so I did a lot of research on that, and that's how the program really got founded. The things that I think are good, I mean, I could give a lot of different information here, but I'm going to try to stick to some key things that I think are really important. Obviously, the content of what the business is, what the niche or the opportunity or the solution that the business is solving, the market that it's operating in, its competitive positioning. Those things are really important. And I think that's the baseline that you need to think through as you're making the pitch for capital of any sort. That part is a basic, like having the story developed with the competitive set around it, that the market, the market it's serving is really important. But I think more important, and this is the point I really want to make, is because you can get great content, but it maybe isn't delivered in the right way. So I actually feel very strongly in the how part of it. The what, to me, I think people do a really good job on the what and putting it together. It's sometimes how the pitches are made. And I feel very, very strongly that having very simple, straightforward, no jargon, and transparent pitches that go through the information in a very succinct way is critical. I think being real about what are the risks that exists, or where are the risks to success, being open about that is really important, and having good answers on how you'd mitigate those. And finally, the biggest point is the leadership. So, bringing forward the confidence and the leadership to demonstrate that you as the business founder can drive and execute against what you're saying. And that becomes, and all my years of looking at capital and giving it out, is that leadership piece. Who are the people? How are they going to make it happen? And building that confidence that it's all going to come together. And to me, that is the most critical part of enabling a successful pitch, is to get across your leadership and your ability to drive through to the end. You need the financial metrics. You need to show the cash flows and the forecast with milestones and KPIs. I think all of that's really important, but it's the way that it gets articulated in the pitch that's the most important. And I always say this to people: do a practice run before you go for your pitch. And I'll close on that point.
Yeah, no, Gillian, you're so right. Even when I personally look at the way that I invest in startups, I'm looking at the founding team, because your business is going to change so much from idea to the stage that you're in to whatever you decide to execute. And so you're right. It's all about that founding team and the way that they're working together. There's a really great question from the audience that I want to touch on. And Gillian, it's related. It's, there's seed capital, there's the angels that come in at the early stages, then there's, VC money, and then raising beyond. But there's something in the middle around scholarships and grants and access to other programs and capitals. How do you think we should navigate that as women entrepreneurs? Similar to prepping for a VC pitch, or are there different skill sets that we need to tap into other alternative sources of money?
Yeah, that question comes up fairly regularly. And I think there's such a wide range of different types of funding to get access to. And I think it's often hard to figure out where those are. I think this is where networking becomes really important, right? This concept of networking, I think, is talking to your accountant, talking to your banker, talking to your lawyers. Who do they know? Who can you get in touch with? Government programs on the government websites, the business development, the BDC is another, and the EDC, the government-backed programs. I know finding those places through your networks, I think, is the most critical way to get there, because I think getting a referral into some of these opportunities and funding vehicles is really important to get access and understand how these things work.
You're so right. And I think, one of the questions from the audience is, how have you seen the learning landscape and employee training change? But I'll add to that, how are we seeing the networking landscaping change when everyone's at home? Sabrina, earlier last week, we were chatting about women-led businesses, specifically in the tech space. So much of it is finding the right technical team, the right co-founder. So alongside networking to ensure that you are getting the right capital, how are you bringing on the right team members, and how are you networking now in this very remote world that we all live in?
Yeah, I mean, like Bill Campbell, he's like the $1 trillion coach. They just, Eric Schmidt just re-released his top learnings in COVID, and it's just people first, right? Team first. Like, businesses are made by people. It's the technology is not what it is. It's the people being able to use the technology to create economic and social and other types of impact and value. So I think getting the right team is really important, and it starts with you and your leadership. And I want to echo Gillian, be bullish, right? A female startup founder recently showed me a picture of her VC pitch, and it was her in a room of 40 men. And just be prepared that it may be like that, unless you're going to some amazing program like Arati or Michelle McBain at Mars and what she's doing. But this is a little bit the reality of this. So it's your leadership and the amazing people that you hire and your ability to convey the value that you're driving. And so really believe in yourself and the people that you have around you. And look, I am have a very strong passion about skill building, and specifically technical and digital skill building for women. And I want to all say to you, please don't be uncomfortable. It's sort of like that thing where when you were little, maybe you were told that girls were not good at math. It's just absolutely not true. You do not need to be a coder to be a business leader in technology. That is not my background, right? What you need to be is insatiably curious and just always on it and always learning, right? Like I spend hours constantly learning about tech and technology because it's required for the role. And I think now is a really good time to do this. There's a lot of good resources again on Google for startups. We have Grow with Google. There's amazing things out there, but you've got to invest in your technical skills. But what I call it is the unicorn is EQ meets IQ. It's technical skills meets emotional intelligence and the ability to really actually relate to people and communicate and so on. And I am not gender deterministic about this. Everybody has certain things that they need to grow. But I will say is that leadership is a journey, and you need to continuously invest in this, and you need to invest in the skills of your team. And there's just a concerning stat that I'm seeing right now. Like right now, investing in skills is a no-brainer. It's the best investment that you're going to make across the board. And KPMG just surveyed all the CEOs in Canada, and only 16% of them are planning to increase their investment in the skills of their people. That's not enough, right? Everybody needs to grow their digital skills. You've even seen it in what the federal government is talking about. This is our economic engine for the future for Canada. You're part of this, right? And it starts with understanding the tools, not being afraid, diving in, rolling up your sleeves. And then if you're a leader of a tech startup, you got to invest in the skills of your people, EQ and IQ.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, being a technology leader myself, I've worked at Shopify for 7 years and I don't code, but I do all the time learn the way that we are building our platform and the technology that we're investing in. So I understand how to build my team and also speak the right language. I run our product marketing team and I don't have a technical background, but I can explain to you how are we building our features, why are we building them, and how are we investing in them. And I think that's a baseline today. Even if you think that you are not a technology company, you are making so many decisions around your software. And being a small company, you don't want to waste money. I think this is like the most exciting part about technology today is there's so many no code opportunities for you to take advantage of, so then no one can take advantage of you. One of the reasons why I work at Shopify is because you can start an e-commerce store and you actually don't need to know how to code, but you can have a shopping cart up and ready within a day if you wanted. So I think that's important. And that is one of the questions that I am getting from the audience is, do you think coding is a necessary skill when starting a tech company? Sabrina, I think we answered that a little bit, but is there anything else that you wanted to say to the audience members who are wondering this?
Well, look, there's partnerships like some of the fastest growing companies are built on other people's platforms, like Article Furniture and, using Google search to find customers all over the world, all these e-commerce stores based on Shopify. However, you do need technical skills on your team if you're starting a technology and if you're building IP, absolutely. One of the risks that I'm also seeing though is a lot of time the CTOs, we need more female CTOs in Canada. So I would love to see some amazing, the next generation of female coders turn into the next generation of female CTOs. It's one ask, but here's what I tell my nieces. I don't care if you're an urban planner. I don't care if you're in business or if you want to be an architect or in government. Please just take one coding class so that you understand what it is and you understand the language and you're not intimidated by it. And you know what to hire. You don't need to know it, but you need to understand what you're hiring for. So I think it's a language, right? And you're seeing that's why it's on the Ontario, getting onto the Ontario curriculum and in Nova Scotia, because we want our kids are going to be fluent in that. So if your kids are all going to be fluent in this new language, it's probably good just to learn a little. It doesn't need to be your skill set. So know what your skill set is. And Arati, I really loved what you said about this. I actually sometimes think there's a value in not being over technical, but being insatiably curious to the right level of depth of technical understanding, because you can explain it in plain English. And I think that that is where a lot of value is created.
Yeah, and that's where I think you build confidence and that intimidation factor goes away. If something seems like it's too technical, if you can explain it in plain language, it's going to be good for you and your team members and whoever you're working with. So definitely, I'm a huge proponent of that. We talked a little bit about coding classes, and I'm going to plug Juno College here and Canada Learning Code, because I think that they're doing a phenomenal job of starting off with smaller classes and then maybe doing a boot camp if that's something that you want to do, if you are building a more technical product that you want to sell out to the world. So, Gillian, we're talking a lot about education here. What about the learning landscape and the educational training for employees? If you have a team, how are you doing that remotely? How do you think women entrepreneurs should invest in that for their team members?
Yeah, that's a great question, Arati. We're finding new ways. I like the idea of coding, and as a woman who's past 40, and didn't grow up in that, I think this is opportune for everybody to kind of understand these things. What we're doing for our teams, though, the things that we're thinking about is we're even as much as just training people on how to use all these tools that we're all now using. I mean, we're big on Microsoft Teams and Google and other tools that are out there. And, it's training people on how to use them appropriately, how to use them properly. We have agile engineering teams that are putting together launches and products, how to be whiteboarding. We had all the sticky notes on site. Now it's figuring out how to do that on whiteboards. So we're doing a lot of work on training our teams to be able to work remotely and do that effectively in agile ways, because it's a little more tricky to do that. So we're spending a lot of time on that. We're on our entry programs. We're looking to bring in females into the starting programs that we have at the bank in greater ways, so that we can build them up to be future leaders in the technology and CTO. That's been a big focus for us over the past year. So those are some of the things that we're immediately focused on in terms of training and building our staff, which I think is important.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just coming back from mat leave. I've been back at work for a month. So I think everyone around me is a little bit more into remote culture. I'm still struggling with where's the mute button? What's going on? And I gotta say, there's nothing I miss more than jumping into a room with a couple people and whiteboarding out what's going on in my brain. So I'm definitely trying to figure out how to do that on a regular basis remotely. There's so many tools out there in technology, but the almost the motion of a whiteboard and with that sticky notes and the energy that you get with your team, it's hard to replicate that. And so I think, I'm trying to understand what all those tools are. Maybe I'll put up a whiteboard right behind me to get that same energy going. There's a great question from the group. And I think, we have been talking about how businesses are thriving, but also how difficult it is. It's hard when we talk about, gender, in terms of what is better, being a woman-led founder. I think that there are some gender norms around the way that maybe we run companies. And so this question kind of stuck out to me from the audience that says, how do you see women-led businesses thriving differently? I'll leave that to both of you.
I think we have to be so careful with gender determinism. I really bothers me, because if you call it one way, it can be called the other. I would just say play to your individual strengths, right? And build a great team around you. And, if your EQ matters a lot, your ability to communicate matters a lot. These aren't anecdotal skills that are less important than being, an amazing coder. So what I would really love to see, maybe I could flip it that way, because again, I really don't like gender deterministic statements, is I would love to see more women getting uncomfortable, rolling up their sleeves and learning digital skills and being brave and taking the first step, whatever that is, whether it's signing up for a coding class, going to Google for startups and understanding what best practices are, attending a session with Scotiabank for women to understand how to do a VC pitch, and just doing something and building on it and growing it. And then I want to see more women companies grow and expand and scale and hire. We have so many great woman-led companies. There's Eva Wong from Borwell. There's Joanna from Nix. Like there are so many fantastic women in Canada right now leading companies. And I just have the pleasure of kind of knowing some of them and seeing them. And they're amazing leaders. And we just need more of them. And I think the impact you want to make on the world is yours, and it's yours to own. And we all want to see it. So don't let your gender or a norm hold you back from that.
I totally agree with that, Sabrina. That's incredibly well said.
Yeah, I have to agree. And Joanna Nixware is such a great example where oftentimes when I meet, companies like that, I'm with you. I'm not into the gender norm specifically, but I do think that there's something about women or people of color solving different types of problems that we actually haven't invested in yet, right? And I think that's such a huge opportunity for Canadians because we have such a diverse population that I wonder how many different types of problems exist that we're not really solving and we're not investing in. I think Joanna's Nixware company is solving such an interesting problem that, makes a lot of sense, right? And so I'm not into the gender norms, but I am into people solving problems for their communities and for their people.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, if I could just build on that for just a second, because it is such a great point. I see it as finding where there are customers that have a problem and solving that. I mean, I think if, I'm really trying hard at our company to build a customer-led organization, understanding what customers need. I mean, we get, 50,000 pieces of feedback in a given month. Who's going through that? What are we learning? What are we changing in what we do to meet that? So how do we take that and start up a business or go find a problem, as you say, in our community or in this group of customers and be bold enough, like Sabrina says, and go after it? Because that's what's going to, generate businesses to get started is really, I think, finding that customer or that community-led problem and trying to solve it and not being afraid of it.
Great. Another question from the group. It's a bit specific around funding again. I just completed the Founder Institute Accelerator program in Toronto, and the women in my cohort and I would like to know the best practices for approaching angel investors and how do we find them. I can start with this. I think I meet a lot of people through Twitter. And to be transparent, I think that is just an underused medium sometimes by women-led founders or women founders in general. I see the amount of connectivity on Twitter with different industries. Specifically, I pay attention to the direct-to-consumer group a lot on Twitter, and the amount of women that just actually DM me and some of the angels in my network, you'd be surprised. People actually respond to those cold reach outs. And so that's a tip that I'll share is I actually leverage Twitter a lot for our deal flow. And I know angels, especially angels at Shopify, do that as well. What about for both of you? What about accessing early capital? Gillian, you talked a little bit about networking, but what are some interesting ways or how have women reached out to both of you?
I actually like your point about social media. I think there's lots of different forms of social media. And I think that area, like everything else digitally, is growing enormously over the last 6 months. So I think all of these, the LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I see lots of activity happening on LinkedIn. People reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn, and I actually respond on that medium. And so I actually think there's some good activity on LinkedIn. I think, Instagram, Twitter, all of these have different ways of getting at things. I guess the networking is another one. I think always an introduction is helpful. So I think who you're dealing with. I think that's also good, but it's getting to those networking opportunities. So it's finding ways to network with others. And I think through some of these mediums makes a lot of sense. I think people who advise you, having advisors for your business, doesn't have to be your lawyer, doesn't have to be an accountant. It can just be somebody using people that and asking them who they've used. I think that never being afraid to reach out through family and friends and others that and creating these networks. And then the more we can do that, I think the more successful we can be as well.
Yeah, and the family and friends is something I hear a lot from is just the very early. But one of my favorite kind of networking groups is Move the Dial. I think, Jody and team just did such a great job of connecting the industry and like-minded folks. And I think, I bet you if you were to look back, a lot of deal flow was probably made through those connections. And, we hope to see that continue in the future.
Yeah, I'm going to plug Jody because I think if you message her on Twitter, she'll get back to you in a heartbeat. And so she's definitely one of those forces for women entrepreneurs in Canada. There's one question around leadership. And I think, Sabrina, you talked a little bit about you want to see more women who are CTOs in Canadian startups. What about CTOs at that, founder level, in the founding team, on the board? How are we working together as a network, as a leadership group in Canada to increase the amount of women on boards and in senior leadership positions?
Yeah, I mean, there's just let's tackle those separately because I think the CTO and the board are separate. The CTO, you just have to look at the female participation in computer science at University of Waterloo, which is one of our top recruiting universities and is for many tech companies. It's growing steadily and they're doing a great job. But like that's what we need to watch. We need more female role models who are CTOs, encouraging more women further down the pipeline of STEM to be interested in this. And I think this is going to take, this is not a one-year solve. It's many steps, but it's going in the right direction. And I think a lot of folks, including Google and so on, were very vested in moving that. So that's really important. I think on boards, I think like this digital acceleration that we're seeing right now, like the boards need to digitally accelerate as well, right? And if you look at the composition of boards, there needs to be a digital expert on every board because you are making strategic investment decisions, understanding skill set competencies, looking at strategic recommendations. And if you're a digital business, which everyone is, there needs to be more of a skill set. And I would say tendentially, like on the larger boards, it's probably less of what is prevalent right now because a lot of the skills there are from, pre-digital acceleration in Canada. So I think we will see this shift over that more and more that will be a skill set that's a prerequisite for a board. And I think that's a great opportunity for females on boards as well who have the skill set. I think it's a fantastic opportunity and much needed.
Yeah, I do think that there's such an opportunity for women who are starting businesses today to disrupt that as well. I think, if you're a smaller startup, you may not be able to recruit the type of CTO that a larger company like ours would need. But there is an opportunity for you as a founder to take a chance on people and try to get them to that level faster. And so I think that there's a lot that women who are starting businesses on the ground can do today, both for the CTO, but also the way that they're thinking about their boards strategically. In the beginning, you're probably creating more of an advisory group and thinking about diversity and technology skills from the get-go, I think is going to make a dent in that as well. We are almost at time. I wanted to leave time for one last question that I have for both of you, which is young women. I think that, we have so much that we can offer to young women who are just getting started, who are graduating, who have maybe not taken the path of university or college, and are out there who are ready to start businesses. What is one piece of advice, and try to keep it to one, but if you have more, that's fine, each of you would give to young women out there who are starting businesses?
I guess I could start, and I'll be very brief. This would be my 3 words. Don't get discouraged, keep going. I guess it's more than 3 words. Follow your dreams.
Yeah, be bold. Yeah, be bold and, don't think of leadership as a destination. Treat it like a journey and always work on it. And don't compare yourself to others. Just build the team around you that makes you deliver as a team what you need to, and don't feel that you need to be everything. I just think you can do it. Just have confidence in yourself.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Sorry, Gillian, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I read a quote that I wrote down here that I read the other day, and I keep it with me. I think it's actually very relevant to what we're all feeling and going through right now. And it says, resilient people immediately look at the problem and say, what's the solution to that? What is this trying to teach me? Oh, I keep that handy.
I love that. Everyone should write that on a sticky right in front of their laptops. All right. So thank you both so much. This was such a great conversation. I think that there were so many nuggets of information, both very tactical, which programs to look out for, which social networks to use, but also high level thinking about leadership and how we can be more bold as women entrepreneurs. Thank you both so much. I am going to give it over to Phil, who is going to give us our closing remarks.
Thank you very much for passing over the microphone to me. I think we can all agree that this was an excellent and important discussion. Guests, thank you for engaging with us online today. My name is Philip Tardif, and I'm a director of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Gillian, Sabrina, thank you again for taking the time to share your insights and perspectives. And Arati, thank you for your thoughtful moderation and your guidance of today's conversation. There may be a role for you in moderating some political discussions, so you can expect some call-ins. Again, to the three of you, Gillian, Sabrina, and Arati, thank you for an inspiring conversation. Your reminders of the importance of startups and the crucial role of Canada's women entrepreneurs in our community and ecosystem should be front of mind for all of us. Your conversation today and the strategies and best practices you've shared will be the catalyst and inspiration for young entrepreneurs, women and men alike, who've joined us today. Now to our sponsors, thank you to Bordenlander Gervais, the Canadian Bankers Association, and PwC for sponsoring today's event. Our events would not be possible without our generous sponsors, so thank you again. We hope you'll be able to join us for some of our upcoming events. Namely, next Thursday, October 8th, we'll host Bert Clark, President and CEO of the Investment Management Corporation of Ontario. Mr. Clark will be joined in conversation by BNN's Amanda Lang. We hope you can join us. Thank you to our AV supplier, Van Valkenburg Communications and LiveMeeting.ca for making it possible for us to come virtually today. Guests, thank you for joining us. Please stay healthy and safe.